So it actually changes. You can kind of see like it's blue and everything, but it actually like changes colors in here with the different coins you put.
Okay.
In.
All right.
So yeah, it's kind of cool. And then this was just some little.
They've always been huge with like the role playing toys.
Sweet. Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I had like the whole collection and stuff like that when I was a kid, and that was all like cheap, foam plastic and
my son,
stuff like that.
Even my son, I mean, because again, I think at this point, several different generations have had their version of Power Rangers.
Yeah.
It might be the original Mighty Morphin Power Ranger, or Turbo, whatever it may have been.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had like tons of like knives and swords that they were cool because they would like connect apart to make bigger weapons or break down, and they made noises, and he had tons of that shit. So
I mean, this is like stuff that I wish we had when. I won't say when I was a kid because I was like a teenager.
Yeah, I was. I was like, should I be watching this? Like, it's kind of cool. Yeah, I know.
I don't care.
If you weren't, you wouldn't be on a Field of Geeks podcast.
That's true.
Right now.
Yeah, that's
everyone gave me shit for it. Yeah, and now Power Rangers is popular, so
that's why you're secret about it until like pop culture explodes, and you're like, I get to. Yeah.
Right. And see, I was never like growing, even as like a teenager, I was never really super secretive about my nerdy shit. Like it was, it was pretty much just like,
right.
Hey guys, I'm going home to watch Transformers.
That's because you were armed.
Whatever.
You weren't gonna fuck with you.
At the time, I was not.
Say something. Of God and
anime. But I used to watch stuff and I'd be like, I don't even feel bad for watching this. This is awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Fuck the haters.
I just kept it a secret. I was like, that's stupid.
It's awesome what they've
in the 80s, it was worse.
Oh,
you had to,
Oh, yeah. Transformers and.
It's just, if you like geeky nerd stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you kept it to yourself.
Nerd, yeah.
Like, oh, you like Batman? Gross.
Yeah, there were two Steves.
Yeah.
The one that was at school and then the one that was at home reading comics.
Yeah, sports ball.
Right.
Make a touchdown.
See, and when I was, late 80s, when I was in like middle school, it was, me and a select few, we were like, oh, let's make our own comic book characters. Yeah. And I mean, we like,
that's
kind
awesome.
of found our own little like nerdy clique. And then I remember me and this kid named Jason, no idea whatever happened to this guy. We would sit around, we'd fucking talk dinosaurs for all recess long, every day. Dinosaurs. So, I mean, I was a nerd through and through.
Right.
I was vice president of the science club, which I helped create.
Holy shit.
In my middle school.
Nice.
So, yeah.
You should be the main host for this show. I'm a phony. I kept it a secret. Yeah.
Isn't it funny to look back on that though? Like when we were, kids and like collecting comic books and stuff like that was considered like, oh, you're such a dork, you're a nerd and everything like that. And now everyone is like, oh yeah, Iron Man.
Yeah.
All this stuff from like the MCU, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm such a nerd. I watch She-Hulk.
And all they know is the cinematic versions of things,
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas I'm critiquing the cinematic version of things. Well, no, he wouldn't do that.
That's not accurate.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
Excellent.
That's so out of character. It's just, forget it. I'm out.
You're like, guys, Bucky's alive. Like, yeah, man.
Their lightsaber's not supposed to be that color.
Growing up, it was the comic books or the, my favorite were the trading cards, the comic book trading cards.
God, yes.
And I remember, being in
so many of those.
4th grade, maybe it was, and trading from that first series of the Marvel trading cards, trading an Archangel card for a Wolverine patch card, and thinking I had scored it huge because that Wolverine patch card was awesome.
Big.
Oh, good stuff. I remember the 89 Batman trading cards from the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's usually how I discovered things was the movie came first, and then I got excited and went to the comics and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
what was the first comic book you remember buying?
It was probably a Fantastic Four from maybe around 76 or 7.
Okay. All right. Wow. I remember like getting them occasionally, but the first one I remember like picking out and buying. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was like Spider-Man 361.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So the first appearance of Carnage.
Yeah.
It was that, and then right around the same time, I remember picking up the the Punisher comic when he turned black for a few issues with Luke Cage.
Yeah.
What?
You don't know that storyline?
No.
Yeah, he accidentally killed a police officer, had to go on the run, went to a plastic surgeon / heroin addict, and had her kind of give him some plastic surgery to escape, and she turned him into a black man.
Coming to Disney Plus.
Yeah.
and he then left New York and went to Chicago to hide out, where he meets Luke Cage. And he and Luke Cage had this little 3-issue adventure, which then spun into Luke Cage's own 20-issue run.
Right.
And then by the end of his adventure with Luke Cage, he like fades back into White Punisher.
Yeah.
I mean, the 90s were a different time. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, you're just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. But
yeah.
And you know, when I was a kid, though, we lived in Omaha, and by our apartments that we lived in at the time, there was a 7-Eleven. And so there was my elementary school, walk into 7-Eleven, and then home, and they had them on the newsstand. They had like a big rack of comics, so that's when it started, it was in the 70s, and it was Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Batman, and Superman. Those are kind of the four mains, and if I could pick up something else goofy, I would, but those were fun days.
That's where I first discovered that that G.I. Joe was even a comic book. Was a Quick Trip on Southeast 14th Street. I think it's maybe now a Mexican grocery store or something. But anyway, remember going up there and picking up a G.I. Joe comic, and like growing up on like the cartoon where they shoot lasers and everyone parachutes out safely. And this first issue was like Death of the Battle Force 2000. I'm like, oh, wow. Open up and like 6 people just like bite it. Like sneak peek gets gunned down in the street. And I'm like, oh, this shit's different.
This is dark.
I was hooked after that on that comic series. I was all in.
Man.
My cousin got me into comics, I think, because he had a great collection, and he took me to my first comic book stores, and I think I picked out the wrong comics because I was like, there was just so much.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But yeah, I definitely loved the movie adaptation comics for the Batman movies, which gave away the whole movie. Oh yeah, I think that's why they stopped making those comics.
Yeah, or they released them after.
Yeah, right.
Well, and Marvel did a lot of those too. Like I remember having a Star Trek 6 comic book.
Oh shit!
Like an adaptation one, and then they had some really weird ones. They had like Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Yep, I think I
remember having that one. And
Death of Superman. That was like the first time I actually went out and like Target acquired. I'm buying a lot of these because I'm gonna be rich, and they're $30 now for a break.
And as a regular at comic stores at the time, that was the worst time.
Yeah,
to be a comic fan was just because you're going in there for your normal crap.
Yep.
There's lines stretched out the door of people who don't give a shit about comics. Right. Just wanting the issue.
Yeah, they saw it on 2020. And I just have to have
They think they're going to retire early on it.
And it's like, even then, I'm like, he's coming back, right? You guys know that, right?
They're not going to kill off their...
No, that reminds me of a Robot Chicken sketch. Where, so like, it's like Batman's giving a eulogy and it's like Green Arrow died.
Oh, yeah.
And he's up there, he's like, no, you know what? Screw this. How many here, raise your hand, have died and come back to life?
Everybody
raises their hand, and then like Green Arrows in the back.
Well, one of the things that largely drove me out of comics is that exactly where it's not even about telling stories, it's marketing.
Yeah,
that's what they're doing. Is they're marketing these characters.
It's events now too.
It is. That's the other thing too. I tried to get back into comics just a few years ago, and initially, right away, it's like event after event after event, and I'm like, I just want to read one or two or three titles. I don't want to have to collect everything because that's what drove me out of it in the late, I guess early 2010s. When I got out of it, is because it was event after event after event, and I'm buying shitty crossovers written by shitty authors.
I want to say
it'll all get changed in 6 months, and
I want to say because my dad and I were like collecting, big into like collecting Spider-Man and stuff like that, and I want to say what stopped our comic collection was the Clone Saga for Spider-Man.
Oh, well, that's what kind of stopped 90s comic. I mean, that's what really burst that bubble altogether.
It was like, okay, you have to. It doesn't just follow in one series. You've got Web of Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man, Adventures of Peter Parker, like whatever the Spectacular Spider-Man, all the other shit.
Well, I think with that,
Mary
it was supposed to be a certain number of issues, and they're like, oh, let's expand it, and then made it like 100 more issues.
Right.
Yeah. And it became a convoluted mess, and I do think that was largely what killed the comics
well, and then they had
in the 90s.
Every issue, they had a variant cover. They had ones that would like, if you buy all 4 covers, you can put them together and make this little mini poster. I'm like,
I still don't like variant covers today. I don't like variant covers.
Yeah.
I don't like the fact, because I can't tell you how many times, especially with a lot of Marvel titles now, I've noticed is they don't put right on the front what the issue number is. It's like hidden on the back.
What?
And so you pick up and I'm like, oh, I don't have this issue, and then I take it home and I've got
you have it,
issue.
and
it's just a variant cover, and they put it on the back in some weird print that I'm not good at looking at, is knowing even what issue I'm buying. So comics.
Yeah. Well, DC's
comics
crazy
are
now too, right? I mean,
it's all terrible, and sales today are,
I
mean, I've stopped reading all current with the exception of Spawn,
right?
And it's only because it's still very true to its roots, and it's it's basically standalone storytelling, and it's fun. It's always great art to look at.
It's part of Image, right?
Yep.
And is Image itself doing pretty well? Do you know, or are they?
They have more titles in the top 50 than DC does.
Wow.
And I think Image is still doing. They're still doing it relatively right. I think where it's not about, because it's. A lot of it is like small, self-contained miniseries from independent creators. It's riskier titles, but it's not event crossover after event crossover. You don't have that. You don't have to read 30 issues of comics to understand a 6-issue run of Chew or whatever
Right, exactly.
And so I think Image is doing it, I think, relatively right. And there's something to be said, I think, for that long form serialized storytelling. But I think a lot of it gets lost, especially because nowadays the storytelling aspect is so decompressed because they're not telling 1-issue stories. They're telling 6-issue stories because it's got to fit into a graphic novel.
Right.
And that's what they're telling stories as now. And I miss the old days where you could open up a single issue of a Spider-Man comic and not have to have read anything before it to kind of, and if you want to maybe enhance your understanding, there's little editor notes and say, hey, see this issue for that backstory or whatever.
Yeah.
I really miss that when you could pick up an issue of something and know exactly what was going on.
Right.
Because that's how it was in the 90s, right?
Yeah, and it got to, I remember back in the day where it was like, if it went past 3 issues in one story, it was like, wow, this is a big deal,
like Punisher turning into a black man.
Right,
3 issues.
But back then, I don't know how many times, I mean, I love the old Batman stories where it was just self-contained 1, maybe 2 issues. Story in a row, and that was it. And and then next month, what's going to happen next month? It's something new and different. And
I do. I really miss that from the 80s and 90s. I think that's something that I enjoyed about comic reading at that time, because it's so not friendly for new readers either to go to a comic book shop and pick up a comic book.
Yeah,
especially I mean, and this is why I say that it's all about marketing now, because they try to do that. So what happens is, in the movies, Black Panther becomes a woman. So what's going to happen in the comics? Black Panther becomes a woman. What happens in Thor? Granted, with Thor it was kind of a little reversed, where Jane already had the power. Anyway, But what's happening now is the comic books oftentimes are mirroring the
cinematic partners.
Partners.
Out of laziness, pretty much, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, we're out of ideas. We'll just borrow from these creative types.
And I would hate, and I, as someone who again enjoys writing, I would hate to be a writer and be told, oh, hey, by the way, now
you're completely pigeonholed into writing what you're told to write.
Oh, hey, I know you've been writing Spider-Man for however long, but now Peter Parker's no longer Spider-Man, and it's somebody else for a little bit. I'd be like, this is some bullshit. So, especially I'd be like, I'm not paid enough for this.
Right. And Punisher, no, we're not going back to that, Phil. Okay.
I'd be like, wait, Punisher be a black man again?
That's crazy.
Not in 2023.
No.
Right.
At least not going about it that way.
Oh my God. There's so much stuff. Oh, those are probably impossible to find, I imagine. Those.
I bet they're probably in any
comics.
I bet you could find them in like the quarter bins somewhere.
Wow. That's insane. I'm sure there's so many other storylines there.
I mean, that's just one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
There was a lot of
it's pretty
there was
crazy.
a lot of zany shit back in the day that they were
right.
able to get away with. They can't now.